Hello, hello, this is Carissa and Tom on Tentacles, the podcast from Crown and Reach. We are feeling our way through the murky waters of strategy and operations in an uncertain world.
Sudden intro. What do you know about Xerox PARC?
I know that they are notorious for innovation.
Very much so, yes.
Notorious was a deliberate word choice because I know that the story is a mixture of happy and sad.
It's a very careful word choice and very right. So if you might well have heard of this. If you're listening, you might have heard of Xerox PARC before. It's actually taught in quite a lot of courses, but the way we look at it, the way we're going to unpack it now, is different, I think, from what most people teach.
That's right. Spoiler alert, it features something called uncertainty bubbles, which we've been talking about a lot lately, and we'll continue to talk about whether anybody likes it or not. No, they're very useful.
That is our system.
They're very useful. We get a lot out of them, and we think you will too. And I know, Tom, that you have many times you've given me the kind of potted history version of Xerox PARC. And it's a very useful example in many ways. Recently, you explained it to me in a different way with more detail, and the penny really dropped for me about why it is such a useful example to look at, and why sometimes people take the wrong lessons from it. So I'd like to get the full download from you today.
I'll see what I can do. I must confess, I'm not brilliant with names of people, but we'll give the broad outline of what I believe happened. So Xerox, famous for being a photocopier company. Literally, the verb to Xerox something is to make a photocopy.
That's right. The first time I ever came across it, it was in a sort of a teen fiction book, and it was about a teenager who Xeroxed a love letter to his girlfriend, and the girlfriend was not amused, and she broke up with him.
Oh!
There we go. It's a fun little sideline.
That is a good sideline. Xerox has enabled all sorts of wonderful things. So they were big in photocopiers, but they were also looking to innovate. And they hired a guy who was just a brilliant innovator. So one of the classic stories that it's told, or one of the reasons why Xerox PARC is held as an example, is the environment and the constraints, the conditions that this guy enabled for his team. So he set up on the other side of the country from Xerox's main headquarters.
1,000 miles away.
3,000
miles away.
America is really big. So he set up over there and had some really interesting practices that they did in the sort of team there. Like, I believe famously they used beanbags for meetings, so it was hard to get up and storm out if you were angry. You can't really get out of a beanbag in a huff and storm off. You look really silly.
Just stay there and look angry instead.
And just that little extra bit of friction would get people to be exposed to challenge to ideas, that sort of thing. But it wasn't just make people sit there and take it. Also, famously, he was great at creating the psychological safety while also creating the pressure and the opportunities to really invent exciting things. So this team at Xerox PARC, 3,000 miles away from Xerox main headquarters, they invented the computer mouse, the graphical user interface, the printer, like all the stuff that's connected to your computer box today pretty much was invented at Xerox PARC.
And yet they're not quite as much of a household name these days as other innovators.
No, so what went wrong?
What went wrong?
This brilliant innovator. So the next way that the Xerox PARC story is told is, oh, look at the silly management team. They didn't realise what they had on their hands. Because famously, the management team didn't really get anything that they were doing at Xerox PARC, didn't really like it, fought them every step of the way to try to stop this innovation happening because they wanted something that looked more like photocopiers. More innovations that are just tweaks on a photocopier, because that was their main business. And then what ended up happening was Steve Jobs came to visit, and he stole all the ideas and then built them into Next computers and Apple computers. And that's how the Apple computer became so big.
So I'm guessing it's not quite as simple as look at the silly management.
Not quite as simple. What it actually becomes, I think, in our framing of the thing now, is the guy who was such a brilliant innovator and created the great conditions wasn't good at the other side of uncertainty bubbles, which is preparing the narrative groundwork with the stakeholders, the people who are ultimately going to pay for this, who have to get behind it, and being able to make it okay to build openness to the new inventions that you are innovating, so that they become acceptable, so that there is a route for the company to actually accept them in the first place.
Right, so what you're saying is that it's not enough to just create the space to have these brilliant new ideas. You've kind of got to lay the groundwork for the conditions to occur that allow that to happen, but also there's some aftermath of what you do after that, that
There
brilliant
is.
new idea has come to fruition.
Yeah, and the real secret is that, I like the way you put it, there's some aftermath, but actually it's really during math.
Duringmath. This is a good time to actually talk about uncertainty bubbles. What is
Yes.
an uncertainty bubble?
So it is our answer to the quote by that Japanese CFO who was quoted to me by JP Castlin, friend of the pod. Hey, JP. He says that the deliberate strategy is what we share with the stakeholders. The emergent strategy is what we actually do. And this makes it extremely clear that there's this enormous tension where companies, by and large, big companies especially, they want predictability, they want good management, and that means knowing what's going to happen and then making sure it happens that way. Whereas innovation is about surprise, and it's about unexpected things happening and stuff that you weren't looking for showing up, and you then figuring out what to do with it. And so they're really incompatible.
They're not the most natural of bedfellows.
And that played out at Xerox PARC. The innovation guy, 3,000 miles away, had huge fallings out with the management team and became effectively persona non grata with them. He was really unpopular with the management team. His team loved him. The rest of the management team did not. And so when they ended up presenting the ideas to the management team, it was through this sort of trade fair that they ended up having to set up so the management could come out and see all of what they've been doing. But the guy who'd been running the innovation lab wasn't allowed to be even there. He was so unpopular. So that suggests one of the aspects is if you have terrible relationships and you don't make it easy for the other people in your business to get on board with and to feel safe about the things that you're creating, don't be surprised when they are afraid of them and don't accept them.
Exactly. And I mean, even for the people who were allowed to exist at the trade fair, like if it's got to the point where the vibe is like a trade fair, it's too separate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like there's no kind of, you've got not enough common ground with the people who are coming to look at the stuff you've done.
Yep. And they don't know what they're even looking at. You've broken the Maya principle, haven't you? The most advanced yet acceptable. They were coming to what they thought was a photocopier trade fair. And what they saw was the future of computing that they couldn't even imagine being a thing. At this point in time, nobody had a computer at home, except real geeks who were building kits and then doing that sort of thing. It just wasn't a thing that was possible in the world.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I sort of wonder whose bright idea was it to have this separate facility 3,000 miles away?
That is one of the questions. And it is... If we think about then back to that quote, how do you achieve this double game is one way I've called it. You've got the game of innovation where the tempo, the conditions, the rules, the expectations, the norms are so completely different from the game of internal corporate politics, management, building consensus, all of that sort of stuff. They're so wildly different. How can you do them both at the same time?
Right, and I guess, I mean, in that sort of a light, it makes sense that you'd want to have it far, far away from business as usual.
Yep.
Even though ultimately that's not a helpful move, it's understandable to try and make it be very separate. Because it's doing something totally different. Why would we want them anywhere near us?
Exactly.
They're just going to be a distraction.
Totally. And they're going to... Other people around will see what they're doing and want in on it or get distracted.
They'll see the beanbags and they'll be like, I want some of that beanbag action.
Yeah, baby.
We have beanbags in our lab.
We do. We don't sit in them at the moment because it's too hard to get out.
Toddler loves them though.
Yeah, it loves to jump on them from great height. But it's a common failure pattern for innovation hubs inside big companies. It's a thing that happens so often.
So even when they are embedded within the company, there's still too much separation.
Exactly. They are too permanent in a way, which ironically means they get shut down after 18 to 24 months because they haven't worked in the way that the rest of the company works in. And over time, the demands of the management structure for legibility and predictability penetrate through that. Yeah, it can't stay separate for that long. So this is why you need instead uncertainty bubbles, which are much more short-lived. You design them not to be things that are semi-permanent. They're things that literally have a temporary lifespan, just long enough for you to set up the conditions to do some innovation type work, while also laying the groundwork, doing that Duringmath for
Duringmath. I think that's a new coinage that's going to be here to stay.
Definitely word of the year. And so you also need to be sending out almost narrative experiments within the rest of the organisation to figure out how can this land well, who's on side, how can we build a way for this to be safe, actually.
So the Duringmath involves a constant interplay between the people who are working on the uncertain thing and the rest of the business.
Yeah.
Even though there is a bubble that means that the new thing is somewhat separate, it's a sort of porous barrier.
Yeah, porous in some ways. It's actually, I think that's an interesting clarification for the whole concept. I think it needs to be completely non-porous. What you have is a small team or an individual who is maintaining the membrane of the bubble.
Okay, so let me clarify what I meant, because I think maybe porous barrier is not the right word. In a minute, we'll talk about a specific example that happened last year. That is that will make a lot of this abstract stuff much less abstract about how an uncertainty bubble can work. But one of the defining things about the way that it worked was that there was quite a lot of interaction during the time when the uncertainty bubble existed.
Yep.
People were involved in the process even if they weren't working on the new thing.
Yes. Yep. That is, you are using, to make an uncertainty bubble work, it's all about feedback loops. And you've got feedback loops in two directions. One is directly out to the market that you're going to be working with, that you're innovating with. And that needs to be extremely rapid and is about rethinking, reframing what you're even trying to do in the first place, what you're even trying to innovate, and figuring out something novel. Sometimes it's about shutting yourself away in a playground and inventing a mouse, but often it's about figuring out what you're going to do that's going to work within the market, while you've got another set of feedback loops going at the same time, which are internal, which go into the rest of the company and are about being a sort of information radiator. It's about catching people in hallways and doing a bit of nemawashi, sort of the pre-meeting meetings, and testing out different ways of framing what you're thinking of working on without letting on what it is that you're doing that would be terrifying to the rest of the organisation. Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at with my terrible description of a porous barrier. It's just involving people in the process so that it doesn't become too scary, because they know something different is going on, but they're involved, and it kind of keeps people on the same page.
Yeah. And the magic and the thing that takes, I think, the skill or the judgment is if you reveal too much, then it's going to get kiboshed. It's going to get eaten by the rest of the organisation structures. And before you know it, your daily feedback loops, where you're innovating incredibly rapidly, get slowed down to the speed of the rest of the organisation, because you're having to go through various approval channels, you're in a bunch of committees, etc., and you can no longer innovate because you can't.
Right, and that's why it's this double game.
Yeah,
which is where you've got the overarching story, and then you've got the stuff that you're doing day to day, and people are involved in the day to day stuff, but they're only really aware of the overarching story.
Yeah.
We should talk about the specific example, because this is getting very, very wishy-washy now.
Super abstract. So, yeah, a specific example is last year working with a client, and they had an app that had been through, I think, 4 or 5 different rebuilds by the time we showed up. And it had potential. It had a handful of true believers who had really got to grips with it and loved it. And this app was to do with biofeedback, a way of training your physiology for higher performance using biofeedback that was detecting things about your physiology, stuff like that. Quite complicated, a bunch of theory before you could really use it. And we realised that was the problem, didn't we, when we saw it? It looked like when I started teaching dance, which was some years ago now, and I didn't know better. So I thought, if I just share all the theory, then people will figure out how to dance. So I'll explain it really clearly, and then they'll be able to do it.
Because everyone loves theory as much as you do.
Absolutely.
Mad for it.
And then it turned out that didn't work at all, which is, spoiler alert. Could anyone see that coming? Mm-hmm. And what it turns out is actually true is, no, you have to get people moving and gradually figure it out for themselves. And once their body knows how to do it, then the theory can make some sense. And you can use that to explain to yourself what you're doing to help you then improve on what you're doing. But if you've got no body awareness to start with, the theory can't help. So what we do now is we put on some music and we get people walking around the room in time with the music. Now you're dancing. Mm-hmm. And then we build from there and add the theory as it makes sense. So this app that we were invited to help with had the same sort of issue, a ton of theory, and then it gives you this complicated biofeedback tool and expects you to figure out your own protocol for how you're going to train yourself.
Yeah, I remember being a guinea pig for the original version of this tool. Yeah. And it was it was quite a stressful experience. My palms are actually sweating at the memory.
Remembering, it was tough. And I noticed that in order to run a relatively simple test, just one iteration, where what we learned was we still haven't got this. There's a lot that we need to learn before we know how to build a teaching program for this. It just took too long. It took 2 or 3 weeks to go through making a plan, agreeing it, hacking the app software so it could do it, getting people to test it, including you, thank you, and then processing all those results and then trying to come up with it. It just took far too long. We didn't have time to do enough iterations for us to get there. We needed an uncertainty bubble. And then someone from the client team mentioned offhand that they'd done a challenge a couple of years ago where they got everyone in the company to use the app every day for a month and do different things and, fun little exercises. And a light bulb went on, ping, that's the opportunity. And so we decided to do a challenge month. Now the challenge month, that was our uncertainty bubble, because to the people who were joining in the challenge month, who were people from within the company, it looked like the whole thing had been planned out in advance. It was a program that had been prepared and was going to be run like normal.
It felt safe, felt official, felt like something that had been done before.
Familiar, yeah.
Not too risky.
Yep. But to those of us inside the bubble, us and one of the people at the client, it was anything but planned out in advance.
Right,
it was
meant
improvisation.
Day to day, like literally on a daily basis, reinventing what you were testing.
Exactly. And we used various different bits of software to cobble together something that would simulate what a program for a client might be like, but we didn't have time to build it properly. That would have been a waste of energy because we didn't know what we were going to build in the first place. So instead, we used the app that they currently had, which wasn't very good, but we could work around the problems with it. We used Google Forms, just made a Google form every day, which contained both the instructions for what people needed to do that day and also a chance for feedback. So they could fill in answers, they could answer what it felt like, they could tell us things that we didn't know we wanted to look for. There were just all these sorts of different ways for us to get feedback. We'd also get a measure based on the forms returned of how many people were keeping up with the program as we went along. So we were getting automatic analytics and feedback loop all built in, Meanwhile, the person who was in the client was in the office talking with people, helping them out with it, picking stuff up that you couldn't put into the form. So really feeling all that out. And then to send the links out, we used email, but we also set up a WhatsApp group for everyone who joined the challenge, which also that we thought we'd just send out the links for it, but it became a fun emergent thing that started to happen, was people started sharing screenshots of their results and having a bit of banter about it. And so, yeah, every day was just figuring out what we're going to do today. We started with a loose plan and a loose idea, but for the first couple of weeks, that loose plan was evolving every single day, and we were throwing whole sets of ideas out and trying new things. We realised after one point that we needed to figure out ways to get people back on the horse when they've fallen off it, because we had some weekend challenges. In the first weekend we came to, we gave them weekend challenges, and nobody did them.
Because it's a weekend.
Yeah.
I don't want to do work at the weekend.
We later realised everyone was on their work laptop reading the Google Forms, so they couldn't really access it from home anyway.
Oh.
And things like that come up that are like obvious in hindsight, but it sort of, it helped us to discover stuff that we would have found with clients as well, and now we found it much more cheaply without having built a load of stuff already. Anyway, long story short, that's your uncertainty bubble. To the people on the outside, it looked like it was entirely smooth and planned out the entire time. To us on the inside, we were trying out dozens of different ideas and getting real-time feedback.
Right, so sometimes literally using what happened the day before to help you decide what to do for the following day.
Exactly.
Like really kind of on the fly, making decisions about what you test.
Yep. And then we culminated the whole thing with a live session where there were extra challenges and all sorts of fun stuff for the people, which gave us another chance to get even more feedback and even more qualitative, vibes-based data on it. And really the result of it was, how did we have the feedback loops? We had the feedback loop with a sort of proxy for the market, which was real people working in a company who were going through this challenge program and training the biofeedback mechanism. We also had the stakeholders in that challenge cohort, so they were going through the experience as well and feeling what it was like to be in that sort of experience, as opposed to what it had been like to be just trying to use the app by themselves.
And I guess this is maybe something to put a pin in and talk about after you've finished telling this story of this particular client thing, but I'm guessing it's easier to do it when you're able to dog food like this, right? Like I'm thinking about what could Xerox PARC have done with the things they were building. Maybe sometimes it's harder to have that involvement of people internally, and does that make it politically harder? And how do you kind of get around that?
Yeah, that is a good one. We'll put a pin in that and we'll definitely come back to it. The other thing that we had was wrap-up sessions and sharing what we'd learned from doing this. Wrote a strategy document which laid out, here's what we see going forwards.
Right, this is the reintegration. So it's not enough to just, pop the bubble and walk away.
Yeah.
There's a process of, and it will vary depending on what exactly has been done and how it was done. But you kind of have to work out how is this going to slot into the organisation's existing narrative.
Yep.
Right.
That's right.
And what's a viable narrative and what isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, so that involved simply conversations with the CEO and other key stakeholders as we went along, making sure that they were updated on some of the things we were learning, some of the things we've been trying, making sure they were not surprised by it when we finished the process. Now, it helps that they were involved in dog fooding, like you say, but we still needed to do a strategy document that laid out, here is the direction that we could take this forward, which has emerged from this uncertainty bubble. It was a radical shift from what they had been thinking this would be, because before the idea was the app would be a subscription-based model, so people would pay monthly and then they would regularly just be using this training system.
So the idea being the app itself is the thing that's the valuable thing.
Exactly. What emerged after the challenge, that uncertainty bubble challenge, was actually, no, the app is just a tool and it's never going to be enough by itself. What really worked was having a structure provided for people, but really having people involved who were there making this a cohort.
A live cohort. And actually, did you mention already that after the internal testing, it was then tested with clients for real?
That I haven't mentioned that yet, but that was the strategy. Let's now take that as still without investing much more in building the app or doing anything like that. We can deliver this as a pilot with several clients to see, does this hold up when we do it for real?
Yep. And then I guess the new narrative, which the CEO kind of came to of his own accord, was that it's the cohort training. That's the thing that people are actually paying for, and the app is just the free thing that helps enable that.
Exactly.
So it's no longer a subscription.
Yep, no longer a subscription. Instead, staged series of levels. So you could start with the beginner level course. Then after you've integrated that, 6 months later, you might do the next level, level 2, then 6 months later, level 3. So there's a chance for that repeat business to happen and for people to keep making progress and doing more and more advanced stuff and training even more. But it's parcelled out in a way that's realistic for people who are in busy corporate lives. You know, you can't just be training all the time on this sort of thing. It's easier to do it in bursts when it's an easier time of the year, not crunch time. And all of these things start to fall into place once you find a strategy that actually makes sense. And we worked out how to get through it. We also presented the whole thing at one of their all hands type meetings, and thus were able to test out various different narratives and shift the vibe. This app, no bones about it, various people had lost faith in it and were finding it just a bit of a pointless thing the company had, because a burden because so many times they'd take it to clients and clients would open it once and never use it again. That was the problem we were trying to fix. But once we'd done these pilot cohorts with real clients, we saw that the adoption rate jumped to over 60% across the cohorts. People would finish a 4-week course, a 6-week course, and still be using it.
Oh, nice. We should have this as a case study.
We should. It's a good. Well, it's got a biz through this, isn't it?
The time is nigh. Yeah. No, 60%. Go us.
Yeah, it's a really, really strong result. It was actually better than I thought it would be. I tend to be quite pessimistic, or
I think we both
skeptical that it will work, but optimistic that we can figure out how to make it work.
I'm the more pessimistic.
But yeah, going back to the point you put a pin in, the mistake that your Xerox PARC man made was he didn't have the Nemawashi and the information radiators and the bringing all the rest of the execs along on the ride with him.
I love information radiator as a concept. I think that's really helpful. What is Nemawashi?
Nemawashi is a Japanese word which means preparing the ground. So it's the meetings you have before the meeting, so that nobody in the meeting is surprised. Nobody loses face, because everybody knew exactly what was going to happen because you had all the meetings before the meeting.
It's really kind of helpful to see it through that lens politically of just making it feel acceptable to people. And I'm remembering in the past, you and I have both worked at a company where there was like one of the teams was like the innovation team. And it sort of breeds a sense of suspicion that people are off doing these wacky things, given free rein to just, have a great time doing crazy ideas. And it doesn't lay the foundations, or, it doesn't, I've forgotten the word I used just now that was good, but it doesn't make the rest of the company feel like desperate to accept whatever comes out of this kind of hidden away innovation.
Yeah.
So on a much lesser scale than Xerox PARC, but I definitely relate to how badly it can go wrong if you're not involving people in the right way.
Yeah, it's that same dynamic, isn't it? It's something that you are suspicious of and afraid of. So why would you ever accept it? Because it feels like a threat as well. Is this innovation going to mean that what I do is going to be made obsolete, or that it's going to cannibalize my customer base that I'm depending on to keep my job? Of course you're going to be worried. And so the information radiator idea is you're presenting as you go along the stuff that you need to present in order to help people feel comfortable with it. You have to be careful that you're not presenting just how much uncertainty and chaos you're actually dealing with inside the bubble, because that is even more scary.
Mm-hmm.
That then presents that, like the feeling like you mentioned of like these people are just off doing weird things, they don't know what they're doing. They should be working to a plan like sensible people.
Yeah. So to come back to the, like, what could Xerox PARC have done differently that we put a pin in and we got derailed by ourselves?
Yeah, and it is that, you know, the guy who was running the innovation team, one idea would be he should have been back at main headquarters on a weekly basis doing a roundup of the sorts of things that they were exploring and finding ways to make the bridge acceptable from Xerox to computer. Mm-hmm. When computer was terrifying and was perceived as a threat, what he's looking for is to jam with the rest of the team to figure out, well, what are stories that are available that explain why, hey, actually Xerox can be totally relevant in this looming future if we just shift this, shift that, find the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is possible that there isn't a way through. Mm-hmm. That also happens. So uncertainty bubbles can't be magic tricks. There are times when you do the bubble and what you learn is there is nothing you can do that will work in the real world, and you just have to let it pop and go. Or you might learn that whatever it is that you've discovered that works in the real world, there is no acceptable narrative that this company can get on board with, and you're going to have to let it go. This is why I think better to get in the habit of spinning them up or blowing uncertainty bubbles that are regular, frequent. Just blow lots of different uncertainty bubbles, because some of them work out and some of them don't.
Right, so don't treat it like a yearly exercise that you do for a month.
Maybe
make it a regular thing. And I guess putting in place structure to just enable this kind of collaboration between inside and outside the uncertainty bubble. And I guess there's a stereotype which, you know, as we all know, stereotypes aren't always true, but like the kind of the not particularly politically savvy innovator, right? Like, and the guy at Xerox PARC fits that stereotype.
Yeah.
Right. So needing to, if you have to be good at the political side as well, and the building goodwill and staying in touch with people about what's going on, you know, paying attention to the stories they're telling and thinking about how your story can kind of combine with that story, etc. Putting in place the structure to make that easier. Yeah. Particularly if you're not able to do the dog fooding internal feedback within the company. So you have fewer options available for how to go get those feedback loops kind of ticking along.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you mentioned a few things like just having a regular cadence of reporting or presenting or whatever it is, just to kind of
that can really help.
Connected.
Yeah.
Are there any other obvious things?
So one of the tricks or one of the sort of rubrics that I share is when you're working on any kind of innovation, when you're working in these uncertainty bubbles, there is a range of stuff you're working on in terms of the range of levels of uncertainty. There is some stuff that you're pretty damn confident about, in fact, certain about. You're going to need to build that anyway. There's other stuff that you're middlingly uncertain about, and then there's stuff that you're really uncertain about. The trick is to work at either end. It's the barbell strategy. You want to make direct, meaningful progress with the certain stuff. Do some building, do some stuff that you can point to and say, look, we've done this, we've laid this groundwork, this is now possible, blah, blah, blah. That buys you quite a lot of organisational cachet, because you're doing actual work, you know. Then ignore all the middlingly uncertain stuff and jump straight to the most uncertain stuff. And that's where you're going to focus your 4U method we would use here. So 4U is unpack, undergo, and unfold the uncertainty. And that's where you want the rapid feedback loops to be understanding, well, let's break this down into granularity. We'll unpack our theory of success. then we're going to expose that to reality as fast as possible. Basically simulate, what if this was real? What would it be like? We'll pretend, we'll hack it together so it looks real while it's not, just like we did with the example with the app last year.
Right, so not prototyping, pretotyping.
That is the
that
word, Alberto Savoia. That's him, yeah, great
So
book, The Write It.
Build nothing if possible, basically.
Yeah. And it's surprising how often you can cobble together something that works using other bits of tech. One of the best things I've worked on with this sort of approach, we just used a spreadsheet, a Google sheet, and it was ugly, but it worked and it found the value, and then we made the beautiful version.
Which then became a beautiful dashboard.
Yeah.
But the critical thing, don't start by building the beautiful dashboard.
No, it's too slow. You've got to be able to iterate.
Because the dashboard,
daily.
The dashboard that ended up getting built was completely different to how people originally thought it was going to be built.
Yep. And that is the pattern we've seen over and over again, isn't it? The projects that ended up successful ended up nothing like anyone expected at the beginning, like wildly different. And the projects that failed stuck to the plan, stuck to the vision. So that is where there's a bit of an art in, and like you say, being somebody who can both create the conditions for that kind of radical innovation to happen and feel okay to the people on that team, while simultaneously playing the political game and finding the stories and finding the way to make it comfortable. Mm-hmm. That's fairly rare, I think.
I think it is, yeah. I hate to talk in stereotypes, but yes, it's not a common combination of skills.
Yeah. But I've definitely met and worked with execs who are kind of natural at it and are able to do it without putting a label on it. But our hope is that by putting a label on this and giving it a bit of a frame and sharing some of the qualities of the outside and the inside of the bubble, then it makes it possible for more people to take this on board and try it out. So at some point we are going to get into unpacking what are the conditions that you need to set up inside the bubble, and what are some of the conditions you need to set up outside the bubble.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, what can we offer right now if people want to learn more about uncertainty bubbles? I know we're going to be writing more about them in the near future.
Yes, we've got one piece out about them which tells the story we just shared in writing form.
Right, which is it's our newsletter, isn't it?
It is.
Is it
reach.crownandreach.com.
reach.crownandreach.com. And so, yeah, stay tuned for more stuff appearing there.
Yep. We're going to publish another piece soon as well. We might have published it by the time this comes out.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
I like
but
that.
It'll all be, everything will be there at reach.crownandreach.com. So sign up there if you're not already.
Yeah, and if the idea sounds interesting to you and you want to have a chat about it, then drop us a line.
Yeah, maybe you've experienced an uncertainty bubble. Maybe you've experienced an uncertainty bubble that was too stable and long-lived and ended up becoming too legible and getting ruined. Maybe you've experienced an uncertainty bubble that was a little bit too free and open with how innovation ought to work and ended up getting shut down for that reason. We'd love to hear your stories.
Yes,
we
please.
are here ready to chat with you, although we do have a small baby, so we might not be the most available right now, but we do want to chat, so just drop us a line, tentacles@crownandreach.com.